I'm Connie from Faff Designs. Welcome to my weekly furniture painting videos. In the video today, I'm going to be painting this, and it's going to be a keeper. So, guess what colour I'm going to use? Yep, you've guessed it, it's going to be green. So predictable. This was actually a waxed finish, so I stripped that off prior to starting recording this video because I've already covered it in a previous video, which I will link top right now, and you can go and have a look at that if you want to know how to strip wax. But I've already done that, so I'm not going to repeat it. So here I am, just cleaning the piece with Dixie Belle's White Lightning and giving it a rinse. Then I'm going over it with my Festool and giving it a good sand. That has to be the quickest prep work in history. So I'm actually going to use a custom mix for this piece, and I am using an old container and pouring in Tree Frog Green, which you can see there, and a dash of Daisy. Now I don't have the exact measurements for this mix, I am doing it by eye. It's a colour that I've used before on a piece, and I really like it. It's just going to lift Tree Frog Green ever so slightly and make it into more of a sort of lime or acid green. Just make sure when you do mix two colours together, you are giving them a really good mix. Or you can fasten the lid back on the pot and give it a shake as well. I like to do both, just to make sure all the colours are mixed together. Okay, so our colour is mixed. And as you can see, it's a really similar colour to Tree Frog Green. It's just ever so slightly lighter, just to give me that kind of more lime green or acid green, like I said before. I'm using a Dixie Belle synthetic brush here just to apply it. And this piece is just going to be a one colour finish. I'm not going to layer, I'm not going to add multiple colours, I'm not going to do any blending. And it's for my home, which is quite a busy space anyway. I've used quite a lot of bright colours in my home, but this is the kind of style that I absolutely love. I don't really know what it's called. It's a little bit rustic, a little bit eclectic, a little bit colourful, and towards the end we are going to grunge it up with black wax, which is one of my favourite products to use with bright colours. So I'll speed this up a little bit. As you can see, I'm not using any water with this. I'm using a dry brush. I've not diluted my paint down, and I'm actually doing that on purpose because I want a little bit of texture in my paint. And the reason for that is because it's just going to enable me to add black wax at a later stage, and that black wax is just going to catch that texture ever so slightly. So I am not fussy about the application of this. I'm not looking for a smooth finish. I kind of want it a little bit rustic looking and worn. I'm also going to add some distress into this at the end as well, just because that's a style that I really like and it'll fit in with my home. Okay, I'm just going to take you to the top of the piece now and show you how I'm applying the paint on the top. Very similar to the rest of it, but obviously this is a much larger, flatter area. I'm just applying my paint quite randomly. I'm not, like I say, I'm not wanting a perfectly polished finish on this. So if that's your bag, this is probably going to be your worst nightmare. And as the paint starts to dry, what I'm going to do is drag my paintbrush over the surface. Now, if you want a smooth finish, this is absolutely something that you shouldn't be doing. But I want that little bit of texture. I want my paint to hold a little bit of texture. So I'm just running my paintbrush over the surface as the paint's drying, which is going to give me that little bit of texture. Okay, so I actually ran out of paint, so I need to mix some more. And what I'm going to do this time is basically mix the paint and then leave the pot out while I have some lunch and a cup of tea. And what that's going to do is slightly thicken the paint up a little bit, and obviously that's going to help with the application that I want in getting that kind of texture. So you don't need to add sea spray or a textured additive. If you want texture in the paint, you can get really subtle texture by decanting some paint and leaving it on the side for the water to evaporate, and it's going to just get a little bit thicker. Okay, so we're back doing the second coat and we're being rudely interrupted by a Bella. She always has to get in my space when I'm on the floor painting, as lovely as it is. Sometimes it's, you know, while the camera's rolling. So obviously you can see how well the first coat covered. This second coat is just going to build on that coverage and give me that really solid block of colour. Okay, the dog really needs to go. She's had a kiss. She needs to leave. She's in my space. There she goes. She's taken the hint. So this is just going to build up on the coverage. 2 coats is usually what paint needs. Like I say, you can see how well this colour covered. Dixie Belle paint covers phenomenally well. Most of the colours in the range cover fantastically. But 2 coats is obviously going to build up on that coverage. It's also going to give you more of a solid colour, and also if you do miss any bits, which happens, it just ensures that you're going to catch those and get full coverage. I'm just going to speed this up for you, but I left the paint roughly about half an hour on the side before I started painting again. It's a really, really hot day, so it did get a little bit thicker, as you know, because I'd left the lid off. So that's just going to help me get that little bit of texture on the surface. It's barely noticeable, it's very subtle, but when we apply the black wax in a few steps later, that's going to really pick up on that little bit of texture that we've applied. Okay, so it's been about an hour since I applied the second coat of paint, and now I'm just using my Festool sander to distress the paintwork. Distressing is personal preference. Not everybody likes it. I do on the right piece. This piece is definitely right. It is rustic. It's a nice chunky pine, and it's got that vibe to it that kind of suits it. If this piece was a perfectly painted piece, perhaps not so much, but again, it is down to personal preference. So I am just going all the way around the drawer edges with my Festool, and all the way around the little door that you can see there top left, basically anywhere that I want to distress that paintwork back to the original pine finish. And I'm using my electric sander because it's a dustless sander, and it just means that I can sand inside and I've not got I'm not going to make a mess and dust fly about all over the place, and that's about as easy as it gets. So after I had distressed all round, I'm now going to apply Best Dang wax in clear all over the piece. You can also see that I've painted over the glass. We'll sort that out at a later date. And I'm using a blue sponge with clear Best Dang wax to basically apply it over the paint. So this is going to seal your paint. It's also going to provide protection to the paintwork, and it's also going to give it a sheen. So if you follow me before, you know that I love wax finishes. I actually prefer a wax finish over a varnished finish or a clear coat finish. And again, it is personal preference. Wax provides a little bit less protection than something like gator hide or a clear coat. So bear that in mind if you are working on something like a dining table. Wax is probably not the best top coat to use. This piece is just going to be sitting in my living room. It's not going to get a lot of use. So wax is absolutely fine for this. A lot of my pieces are decorative pieces, so wax is absolutely fine. And a lot of people apply wax with a brush. Again, sometimes I do, but 9 times out of 10, I actually apply it with a sponge because it reduces streakiness, patchiness. You get a really, really thin, even coat of wax applied over the surface of the piece. And I just find it really quick and easy to do. So you've seen me apply wax over the drawer fronts, and now I'm going to show you how to apply wax without streaks on a flatter surface. So a lot of people do struggle with top coats on a flat surface. Again, this is where the blue sponge comes in. Don't try and use too much product, but equally don't use not enough, if that's the correct way of saying it. Basically, the right amount of product on the sponge is going to help you get a consistent finish with wax. Again, the sponge really helps with this as well. If you notice the wax is sort of thicker in certain areas, you can just even that out by rubbing the sponge over the top. You see what I'm doing there? And that's just going to even the wax out and work it into the paint surface. And that is about it. It's really, really easy with a sponge. If you haven't tried applying wax with a sponge, I highly recommend it. It is a game changer. Right, so we're going to apply the black wax now. This is Best Dang wax in black. It's also water-based, like the clear wax that I used in the previous step. And I've left the clear wax on for about 20 minutes before I'm doing this step. So the black wax is super pigmented. I'm applying it with a premium chip brush, which is just going to allow me to get into all the corners and sort of recesses of the drawers. And I'm applying it very, very liberally. So anywhere that you want to add shading, you basically apply black wax. You do not have to be precise. You don't have to be sort of careful in the application. As long as you have done the step prior to this and put that clear coat down first, so that clear coat of wax down first, that's going to act as your barrier. So obviously, chalk mineral paint, which is the paint that I've used, is needs sealing, and it's a very, very matte finish. If you apply your clear wax before a coloured wax, it just stops the coloured wax from being absorbed by the chalk mineral paint. If you go straight in with coloured wax, which you can, there's no rules, but if you can do that. If you do that, what you will find is you have less control over the removal of the coloured wax. So that clear wax is just going to add like a barrier between the paint and the coloured wax, give us more control, allow us to wipe back areas, and it just makes the application a lot easier. I usually apply coloured wax in this way, so I'll normally put a clear coat of wax down first. Like I say, you don't have to, but I just find this easier. And it also means that if you make any massive errors or you don't like it, it is super easy to remove. So speed it up a little bit, but you can see I am literally just whacking that black wax literally everywhere that I want that black wax to sit. Like I say, don't worry about harsh lines, don't worry about it being, you know, like a school child's done it basically. We're gonna sort that out in the next step. I'm just making sure that I have got plenty of that black wax down. Also, this black wax works with pretty much all bright colours. So it looks absolutely amazing with Florida orange, with peony, all the really hot, bright colours. It works so well with, just to add a little bit of dimension and a little bit of depth to your paint finish. And it also kind of makes them look a little bit kind of grungy. Okay, I'm going to slow this bit back down again because I'm going to go back to that sponge that I applied the clear wax with. And I am going to use it as an eraser. So there's plenty of product on there. You don't have to apply any more clear wax. There's quite a lot of buildup of wax on that sponge already. And you can see that because we applied that layer of clear wax first, that black wax is really easily controlled. So I am able to wipe back to the green, and I'm able to blend those harsh lines, leave it in all the recesses, and if I want to remove it altogether, I can do that as well. So typically I'm going to wipe quite a lot of this wax back, but I'm going to usually leave it around hinges, around drawer edges, any recessed areas, the sort of trim at the top and bottom where there's some detail there, I'll leave it there, around the handles, and this is just going to give a really natural look because you're not actually physically removing any more wax. You are removing the black wax, but you're not removing the clear wax underneath it. So it's really like blending the two together almost. It just gives a really, really nice kind of grungy finish without looking too over the top. one thing that can happen is that your sponge can get quite a lot of buildup of product on it from the black wax being removed. So if this happens, take a clean sponge or flip it over if you've got a clean side. I didn't. Get a very, very small amount of the clear wax and rub it over the piece that you want to completely remove that black wax. If you do get any sort of muddy areas where the product has built up on your sponge, this is just basically going to take it right back to that zingy green. So there's a couple of areas that I'm going to want to highlight. You can see me working that now, and you can see how much of the excess black wax is coming off on that sponge. It's just going to basically act as, like I say, a highlight without having to add another colour, without having to blend any colours. We've got loads and loads of depth just by using a block finish, but by using black wax. So we've got lots of variation in the tone just from using a little bit of black wax and then some clear wax to erase, and that's acting as a highlighter. So I'm just going to go ahead and take off that excess black wax wherever it is, wherever I want those sort of brighter zingy bits to pop through. Okay, so it's fairly obvious where I've left the black wax on the front of the piece because it's got quite a lot of detail around the recessed drawers, etc. On the top, it's a plain flat surface. So I'm going to show you what I do just to tie the piece all together, and how I use the black wax on a flatter surface without any of those recesses or anything like that. So we've already applied our clear wax on the top, and I'm just going to take a very, very small amount of product. I'm not using as much product as what I've used on the front, and I'm just basically creating some shading around the top surface, so all the way around the edges, with like I say, a very, very small amount of product on the brush, and I'm kind of just feathering that into the clear wax so there's no harsh lines. And then get that eraser sponge and just really, really lightly, so I'm using a very, very light hand here, really, really lightly just kind of smudge the edges together so that you get, basically it looks like the very edge of your piece is a little bit grungy, a little bit dirty, but that just means that it's going to tie into the rest of the piece and not look too sort of clean and plain, versus the rest of the piece where we've added quite a lot of depth and dimension with the black wax. So I'm just rubbing it backwards and forwards just to work that black wax into the clear wax, and just to make it so that there's no sort of harsh lines, and just using swirl motions just so that it gives a bit of interest on the top. So then you're going to want to let your wax sit for around about half an hour, and then you need to buff the excess off. So again, you may get some removal of your coloured wax here, but it shouldn't remove too much of the coloured pigment. It should just be removing excess product off the surface. You should still get that coloured wax effect. And all this is doing is it's buffing the wax to create a sheen, removing the excess product so that it doesn't feel tacky to touch. And you remember me saying right at the beginning of the video we were going to sort the glass out afterwards. So I'm just taking a sharp Stanley knife blade and just removing the paint with that. I just find this is sometimes easier than masking off, especially for such a small area. So here's how it finished up. You can see that sheen that I've achieved with the wax. It's unrivaled. I absolutely love wax. Don't know if I've mentioned that before. Here's how the top finished out. So you can just see hints of that black wax just to add a little bit of interest on the top. And here's the stage piece. I staged it with pink accessories because pink and green is the best. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it and tolerated me painting in green once again. Make sure you are subscribing to my channel, and make sure you also hit the notification bell because the algorithms change all the time, and that will let you know when I have posted another video.